if you have, say, really bad headaches. So maybe you're stressed out at work and you need to breathe or whatever, or maybe you have a brain tumor. Now, if the doctor just medicates your headache away, you're losing an important signal, and then you're going to find out you have a brain tumor when you drop on the floor and it's too late to possibly treat you.
Please introduce yourself to my listeners.
I'm an investigative science writer, and what I do is applied science. So I dig into the scientific database, I critically evaluate it, and then I put out advice in everyday language that people can use to actually improve their life. The myth is that doctors can correctly calculate your risk or benefit from any treatment. They absolutely can't. They have no idea. There's a conference, and these doctors, senior doctors, asking young doctors, how many of them read papers? Okay, no hands go up. How many of them even just look at the titles in the New England Journal of Medicine delivered for free to their offices? No hands go up. And they just don't even know basically the physiology of the way various diseases present, because they haven't looked deeply into it in a way I feel is responsible.
Amy Alkon, welcome to Real Talk with Zuby. How are you doing?
I'm doing great because I'm on your show.
Fantastic. Well, I'm happy to see you, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. Please introduce yourself to my listeners.
I'm an investigative science writer, and what I do is applied science. So I dig into the scientific database, I critically evaluate it, and then I put out advice in everyday language, no medicalese or sciencese, that people can use to actually improve their lives. So I translate it into everyday language and then practical advice. And, you look at when you're doing this, I had a syndicated column for many years, science-based, and then all the papers died. But each week as I wrote this, there would be the advice in it. And I would have to ask myself, and I would say, I use profanity. I don't know if I'm allowed to use it on the show, but hey, a-hole, would anybody actually do this? And would anybody keep doing this? Because if not, you're really a jerk. You're wasting people's time. This is terrible. And so when you do that week after week, when you write a book, you do this, you're really, really careful about it. And my book that I just wrote is called Going Menopostal: What You and Your Doctor Need to Know About the Real Science of Menopause and Perimenopause. And I wrote this book because first of all, most of our medical care is not evidence-based. We don't know this. And doctors are not evil. They mean well. But there are three big myths of our medical care, and they are that doctors treat you according to scientific evidence. And they know this because they can read the evidence and evaluate it. And that's the first. They actually are not taught how to read research in medical school. So they don't read research because they can't. They don't know how. It takes some real training that I've had through this generous epidemiologist who's coached me for many years. And then the second is that they are trained in diagnostic reasoning. And so if anybody watched Dr. House, that's this process of not just going with what your symptoms are and treating them, but looking for the underlying condition and treating that. Because, for example, if you have, say, really bad headaches, so maybe you're stressed out at work and you need to breathe or whatever, or maybe you have a brain tumor. Now, if the doctor just medicates your headache away, you're losing an important signal, and then you're going to find out you have a brain tumor when you drop on the floor and it's too late to possibly treat you. And then finally, the last one is that it's the math problem. The myth is that doctors can correctly calculate your risk or benefit from any treatment. They absolutely can't. They have no idea because they're not trained in medical schools. So this is medical schools to blame, and then medical institutions, because medical schools churn out all these doctors who have no ability really to do anything more than look at lists called practice standards to treat you. And then, the medical institutions just say, okay, we'll do that. And they don't backstop for what doctors lack. And so doctors, I started out being angry at doctors when I wrote this book, because menopause and perimenopause is the single most patient betraying area of medicine. And then I realized doctors are victims because, you're the rare sociopath in every profession, but doctors mostly want to help you. I go to Kaiser Permanente, it's an HMO. My doctor's not getting a Ferrari for treating me, and so because they don't know, they can't help patients and they mistreat you and sometimes make you very sick, or, you could even die from this kind of lack of evidence behind your treatment.
Okay, there's a lot there. So first of all, how did you get into the world of becoming a science writer?
It's actually a long and winding accidental path. It starts out on West Broadway and Broome, in Manhattan, in Soho, every Saturday. I um, I am just sort of a wacky person, and I like to make everything fun and make people laugh. And so I had two friends like that. We worked together at an ad agency in Manhattan. This was right when I was out of college, and we decided that we would be like that Snoopy, the Peanuts thing. I don't know if everyone knows this, but there was Lucy with her little like lemonade stand advice 5 cents. So we thought, oh, let's do that. We're going to sit out in the corner. We had a magazine rack for a table and these really heavy chairs I got at Volunteers of America thrift shop and carried like, I mean, many blocks the whole time we did this. So we weren't such great advice people because, hi, solve your own problem, lady. Anyway, so we sit down, we have assigned free advice from a panel of experts presented by the advice ladies. And it's things like, wigs and beards, proper spelling directions. We're not, we're not advertising Socrates 2.0, or it wasn't 2.0 then because it was 80s and 90s. And so we think people will just walk past and laugh. Well, New York, the sign says free. People line up around the block to talk to us. And what I came to know later, as I wrote one of my books, Good Manners for Nice People Who Sometimes Say the F Word, that we actually feel good and are benefited by helping other people. That's how we have meaning in our lives, not by chasing happiness, but by extending ourselves for others. So we do this all day. Oh my God, we feel great. We're dirty from the street. It's noisy. Everything doesn't matter. So we start doing this every Saturday. And then New York Times reporter comes by, does this tiny little story about us in the New York Times. I'm from the Midwest, not from a wealthy family, enterprising, worked all my life since age 10, typing envelopes for my dad. So I go, okay, let's do something with this. So I run with it and I get us a TV deal with De Niro. A book deal, a column in the New York Daily News, and then one of my partners had a drug problem. It all fell apart. But then I ended up going off on my own, syndicated in the column, which means you go to many papers. And I did that myself, got like 100 papers, over 100. And then as I did this, so when we were on the street, sorry, I left out part of the story, people began asking us serious questions, about breakups and things. And I felt so terrible and irresponsible. How could I tell them anything? I didn't really know anything. I hadn't taken psychology even in college. So I'm a nerd. I read through all of psychology. I'm shocked. Freud just made everything up. How do you do that? That's horrible. So I then start reading more and more, and I read the science, and then I start becoming educated in how to critically evaluate. I learn statistics. This is this big, grubby, horrible process. And in 2007, I meet this guy, Sander Greenland, who's one of the top epidemiologists and biostatisticians in the world. That's public health. But he is also a big methodological reformer. All the science that doesn't replicate, the fraud, the error, he goes after that, and he tries to improve people's methodology and accuracy and factuality in medicine. And so he's this generous guy. He's really important, really, really important. But he sees I'm desperate to learn, to be better than I am, and so he coaches me informally since that time, since 2007, how to read the research. And then while he's doing this, he's sending me all these articles and studies about horrible harm to patients from the either fraud, scientific fraud, like pharmaceutical companies only publishing data that say, oh, our drug is fantastic, and not the data that say we killed, 6 people, in 2 days or something like that. And so because of that, when I would go to the doctor, I have a problem. I don't go to the doctor and say, hi, I have a problem. What should I do? I first go to the research base and see what the science is in a field and know the science before I go to the doctor. And that's what happened with this book, that I had a hot flash, I read, and I was so horrified to see the huge gap between the science and then the practice standards being applied to women, and how doctors in this field, it's the most scandalous thing. Gynecologists, most of them have no training in perimenopause or menopause. They have, maybe a day in medical school, a couple pages in a chapter, maybe a lecture, but most of them are not qualified to treat you at all. It's a violation of medical ethics that these doctors who have no experience or training treat you. They should refer you. The problem being there are no doctors who have this kind of training. And there are those, I'll tell you this and I'll stop because I'm talking too long, but they'll say, oh, we have a certified menopause expert. And so what that is, Compare what I did. I did an 8-year deep dive into the research, feeling terrified. I had to get things right. This is women's health, bringing the research to them and translating it into everyday language. This is a huge thing. And then these doctors, they need to get 45 hours. It's called continuing medical education online. They're taking, it's like traffic school we have in California. If you get a ticket, you have to take an online course. It's a traffic school for your ovaries, except they only need 15 hours in menopause and perimenopause. They take an online multiple choice test, and then we call them experts. And I know how inexpert they are because I'm like a lie detector now for scientific facts. And when I talk to these gynecologists, they just make multiple errors, scientific errors they don't know, and patients don't know the science. So they are treated, either mistreated or not treated, or treated wrongly by doctors who don't know the science. And this was such a betrayal. That's why I ended up writing this book, because women weren't getting this information, and we are owed this. It's terrible.
Yeah, it seems like a gigantic oversight, given that this is something that approximately 50% of the population will experience at some point in their lives. So what's the story? What's the history between this gigantic gap existing between the knowledge, in terms of the science, as you put it, and the practicing doctors? It seems a bit strange.
It's so terrible. So medical schools, they're basically, morally deficient in not educating doctors. Where, you go to medical school, and I have this whole, in my second chapter of the book, I show there's a conference, and this senior doctors asking the young doctors, how many of them read papers? Okay, no hands go up. How many of them, there are a few questions. How many of them even just look at the titles the New England Journal of Medicine delivered for free to their offices? No hands go up. And he asks them, after all of this, nobody's reading the studies. And the med student, they're actually young doctors. At the end, he says, we don't know how to read studies. And, we're not taught to read studies. And I began investigating this. Andrew Gelman, who's another big statistician like Sandra Greenland, he talks about this. He said, no, they don't get this training in med school. And he, it's sort of accepted by Andrew Gelman, but, it's just not acceptable. This is morally deficient med school, training. They churn out class after class of scientifically and statistically illiterate doctors who do not know how to begin to read the science. And they are prey to pharmaceutical reps. I mean, they just don't even know, like the basically the physiology of various, the way various diseases present, because they haven't looked deeply into it in a way I feel is responsible. But, people want to go home at night, and I understand that. Doctors are very busy. Part of the problem is that, like at Kaiser, my HMO, they see patients every 20 minutes. They have medical record keeping requirements. So when are doctors supposed to do this reading that they're not equipped for? I would feel responsibility and stay late, but most people are not me. I'm not really a normal person. I'm this crazy nerd. They want to go home, have a family, all that. And so you can't expect this. And institutions are morally deficient in that they don't have teams of experts. They should have nerdy people like me, and then people to check the stats like Sander, who's a math genius, make sure we got everything right in our reading. But, to present here, okay, doctors, here's this drug you're prescribing, and you don't know all that. You don't know the immune system. You don't know, the science on inflammation and on the part of the brain that is involved in elevating stress hormones. And so we're going to have these experts come give you a lecture and consult with them when you have a patient you need to prescribe something for. So this way, patients would not be betrayed at the level they are. Most of our medical care is not based in or supported by adequate evidence. And this is from the U.S. National Academy of Medicine, not Amy's opinion. And that's adequate. It's not terrific. It's not rigorous. So when you go to the doctor, if you're not me and you didn't go read first, I mean, how horrible that you are going to get care that's probably not evidence-based, unless it's something, here's a Band-Aid or, and this is such a terrible, sickening betrayal of patients that nobody's correcting for.
This situation, do you know, you might not have sight of this, but Is this something that is unique to the American healthcare system? Are there other nations that are better when it comes to this particular area?
That's a good question. I don't have intimate knowledge of those, so I don't want to, really talk about it. But I know that in Canada, it takes a very, very long time to get care. And often they're denied if they're denied treatment. The hormones that I actually found out are safe. Estrogen was demonized, and I actually myself, the study that came out was fraudulent. It was distorted. It was terrible methodology. They harmed elderly women who never should have gotten hormones and used conclusions from them to apply to healthy younger women. It was just inapplicable and awful. And so that study, that led to the demonization of estrogen as, oh, it's going to give you cancer and everything. And so many doctors believe that, and that in Canada, unlike here, here you can get a second opinion. Now that may cost money. That's, people may not have health care where that's affordable to do. You can go to Planned Parenthood, for that. There are ways to get care through free services, or you can get, here in California, we have Medi-Cal, and the state will pick up the tab if you're poor, if you're quite poor, under the poverty line by 150% or something like that your income is. And so we have more possibility to go and try to get the evidence-based care than they do in Canada. So that's the one example I do know.
Got it. So let's go to some of the basics here. What exactly is menopause?
So menopause, well, technically it's 12 months without a period. So you're no longer fertile. And this is very important because, grandma pushing around a stroller, like I got to look, I have an infant, you have a 3-month-old child, that's exhausting at your age. It's for an 80-year-old woman. No, we don't want that to happen. And so we have this, we don't really know, all the reasons for this, but we have grandmas taking care of kids. There's a grandmother hypothesis that this is so women would have child care. The young woman would have grandma to help, and grandma wouldn't be busy with her own. And so menopause, what happens is you have very low estrogen and progesterone. These are the menstrual cycle hormones, and actually testosterone is lower also. And estrogen and progesterone are these partner hormones in the menstrual cycle that work together. And estrogen, these are, like throughout your body, they potentiate all sorts of healthy things, estrogen, progesterone. And so, the first part of the menstrual cycle, estrogen rises, and then a little egg in a follicle comes up, and then it's a little sac. And then what's supposed to happen is the sac ruptures, the egg is released, goes down to the uterus to see like, hey, any sperm here? And if it's fertilized, you don't have a period, you have a baby, or you have a growing fetus in you. And then, starting with an egg, it's, a fertilized egg. Sorry. And then if you don't have a sperm in there to fertilize the egg, you shed the lining of the uterus, that becomes the period. And so now what happens, perimenopause, this is the transition time to menopause. It's like 3 to 10 years. That can be very symptomatic. And mine was very symptomatic. Some women get very, very sick. You don't sleep. You have these inexplicable ranges and you don't know why. And part of the problem with doctors not knowing anything is that you don't identify these as caused by something that's normal, this stage normal, but it's awful for some of us. So you think something terrible is wrong with me. I got terribly car sick. I live in Venice, California. It's like 2 miles from Santa Monica. I couldn't get to Santa Monica when I was driving without throwing up in my shoes. I mean, I get out of the car and like toss my cookies. This is so horrible and frightening, and so in perimenopause, what happens is many women have problems ovulating. There's a feedback mechanism. It's just not working anymore. And so that little egg stays in its sac and nothing, doesn't rupture. And so nothing is, what happens because of that, when it does rupture, there's this litter left over the sac. It's called the corpus luteum. It's this yellow waxy stuff. And that becomes progesterone. Progesterone's made out of the litter. And you need a big enough sac, a robust enough little egg sac that you have adequate days of progesterone. And this is important because progesterone potentiates something people may have heard of, GABA. Progesterone's like the Valium of the human body. It's this wonderful, wonderful calming force, helps you sleep, be mentally well. And you know this best when you are missing progesterone and you are just like me. I was a raging bitch. And I'm a nice person. I'm from the Midwest. That's how, like, there are evil people in the Midwest, but I'm in the hardware store and I like people. I talk to everyone. There's some guy behind me. I look behind me. He's like my dad and my grandpa, like fixing stuff. He's like got his, the caulking he's buying, something like that. And so I look back finally, the guy starts to hum. Now I want to like murder this man. I want to bludgeon him with a heavy object. This is so horrible. I really feel this. Like I want to like kill him right then and there. And then I'm so ashamed. Who is this horrible person? He's humming. My dad hums. What is wrong with you? It's so shame producing. And luckily I just had started reading in this area and I had seen something in passing and I looked it up when I got home and I realized, no, I'm not horrible. Something's going on with my hormones. And then when you don't have the progesterone, there's something more than just being uncomfortable. And it's that you are at risk of breast and uterine cancer because progesterone does very important things to counterbalance estrogen. So I'll give you the example in the breast. In the breast, there are these generic cells. They can do anything, become anything, double wildly. And progesterone, it's like this foreman, this wrangler, and it forces them to differentiate, to specialize and become breast cells. So then they've got a job to do. They can't be delinquents, smoking pot by the dumpster, doubling wildly. So you're protected from breast cancer. And then, if you don't have progesterone, that's not happening. Those cells can double and double, and it takes a while for breast cancer to form, but this is really dangerous. And the fact that doctors don't know the science, they don't know this about ovulation being a problem. It's so terrible because they want to protect their patients, but they have not the slightest clue how.
Wow. So what's the question I want to ask here? I mean, what is the sort of norm when it comes to women going through this? Do most women just deal with it? Do most go to a doctor and get some type of prescription? What is this is for obvious reasons, this is not my world. I haven't spent a lot of my time thinking about it. So
No, you're so cool. I love you for doing this because you're helping people know. And I want to also talk about how women of color are really betrayed because doctors use white women standards for so many things. And we're mostly all the same. You've got a liver. I've got a liver. Hopefully you have a liver. You're sitting there. So yeah, you must. But there are important physiological differences. Since I'm mentioning it now, I'll just give you that and go back to your question.
Sure.
So for example, Black people have and I think it's both Black men and women. I looked at it in women. So this is women specifically, but probably Black men are close. Black women have 20% lower triglycerides. I may be getting the numbers wrong. And then 17% higher HDL, those are reversed. Sorry, I can't quite recall right now. And I like to always be careful and tell you when I don't quite know. I just don't remember. The reverse. It's not that much. So what this means, those are metrics that tell you someone's healthy. High HDL is very healthy, low triglycerides. But this is the baseline for Black people. So here's a population with horrible metabolic health problems, diabetes. I mean, it's really terrible. And a doctor can miss heart disease. They think a woman's healthier than she is. This is so terrible, and because doctors don't know this, they use the standards of the tests are probably on white men to determine, what they're called lipids, your cholesterol number should be. And this is egregious abuse. And so, okay, you asked the question of, what was the question you asked about?
My question was just about like what the norm is. Obviously, millions and millions of women go through this. I assume millions annually, in fact.
Right, half the population.
Yeah, what does the normal typical woman do? Do they even go to the doctor? And if so, what sort of treatment or lack thereof do they receive?
So that's a wonderful question. And the reality is that there are just there isn't some kind of typical profile. Many women don't go to the doctor. They're afraid of hormones, of taking hormones, because of this study called the Women's Health Initiative study. So those women don't even go to the doctor because they think the doctor is already predisposed to kill them with some kind of a hormone that's going to cause cancer. Now, first of all, the doctor doesn't know the research or anything. And the idea that estrogen causes cancer from the Women's Health Initiative study is wrong. And that was the study I mentioned. It was fraudulent, but I believe this. I heard it in passing, 2002. I was a young woman, not close to menopause. And I thought, estrogen is Satan. I'm never taking it. I'm a science person. That's not scientific. And I started doing this book and I read and I thought, oh my God, how horrible. Estrogen is not harmful. It's protective. It protects your bones, your heart, your cardiovascular system, and your brain. And it is the most powerful symptom relief we have in menopause for those of us who are symptomatic. And so, these women heard this, the doctors heard this, and so they don't even want to go to the doctor. And then if they do go to their gynecologist, they're not getting any kind of questions that would, bring out whether they're going through this, have these symptoms and everything. And so, there are those women who don't go. Then they try to help each other, like on Menopause Reddit, giving advice. This is terrible. They do this because medicine has failed them. They're afraid of these doctors, and they see in various areas of medicine, they're not getting scientific care. They're being harmed. And so they will say to each other, oh, here's this progesterone cream I got off Amazon. Use this, rather than taking what I take, which is an FDA approved drug called oral micronized progesterone. I take the amount they take in France, which is a safe amount that they don't give here, 300 milligrams. I explain all of this in Going Menopostal because women need all this information in understandable language because their doctor's not going to know. So they need to understand the science, and we all can if it's not explained in high church of medicine language. Most of us are smart enough, if we're not learning disabled, to understand all of this, and then we can ask our doctor for the care that they don't know to provide. This is so important. Those progesterone creams, for example, they don't get into the body in sufficient form that they protect the breast and the uterine lining called the endometrium. So you're at risk of cancer while feeling you're protected. And you're also not getting the symptom relief that you would get if you took the oral drug, the actual FDA approved drug. And now there's plenty wrong with the FDA, but they regulate drug production. So what is you're getting, I love your smile there. You're getting the drug it says on the label in the amount it says with the ingredients that are supposed to be in there and not, Viagra or rodent hair, except do not, if you can help it, do not get drugs from India. They have been found for years to be contaminated, horrible. There's a book called Bottle of Lies by a friend of mine, Catherine Eben. She's a colleague in my professional nonfiction writers group. She's a saint for writing this. And there was just another incident in the news. And so the way to find out if you have drugs from India is look at who the manufacturer is. I actually called, because some of them will be made in New Jersey, some will be made in Delhi. And so I called the company to find out where my progesterone was coming from. And you can do that. And this is important. You need to stand up for your health. This seems like, oh, I have to call the company. Yeah, you do. What's really important is that you take care of the health you have so you can live long. You have this new child. You owe it to your child to be healthy, look healthy, because your child can't lose you. This is such a huge thing. And the people in your life who love you, it's just a horrible waste of human life for people to not be protected in ways they can because they're needing to DIY when professional medical institutions and doctors should be covering this for us.
So when you were in the process of, well, first of all, how long did it take you to write this book? When did you first conceive the idea?
Well, 8 years living off my savings for most of it, because it wasn't just a book. If you're an author and you have to take 8 years with your advance running out early on, you don't do this unless you're really just a huge idiot. I can be, I should never buy a motor vehicle without an adult. I'll buy a smart car if I can buy it. I'm the automotive moron. And so, but I know that. But anyway, what happens is I get this hot flash. I'm sitting here, I'm at my desk in Venice, California, the most temperate place in the world. It's like 55 year round, breezy, wonderful. And all of a sudden, what the hell? It's like I'm locked in a trunk in the Everglades. And I think, Oh my God, I think I just had a hot flash. So horrible. So then I call my mother and ask her, Mom, how long did this menopause, well, I didn't know it was perimenopause. This is perimenopause, the lead up to menopause. How long did that go on for you? And she said, I think till 70. Okay. Yeah, Mom, you were not having periods at 70. Okay, thanks a lot. So then I read the research, and that's when I found, because I want to go to my doctor and say, I'm uncomfortable. What should I do? I know better. Read the research. And that's when I was so horrified, at the gap between the practice standards and what the research says. And not all of the research is good either. I'm able to evaluate that and say, look at studies, and for example, this is just inside baseball science, like, there's no control. Like, what did they forget? A control group, and that's the group that's not getting the drug. So you see, and not just, oh, we took this drug and everything's wonderful. Then we were like this much, benefited this percent. Well, no, you need to compare it against something, and a certain kind of blinded study, randomized. So they don't know who's getting what, all of these controls. So research is not just a crap pile. So anyway, I see that Kaiser, my provider, gives women not the oral micronized progesterone I take. This is progesterone. This is an FDA approved drug, but it's the same molecularly as a progesterone in my body. They give women instead medroxyprogesterone acetate. And this is also in Depo-Provera, birth control. And this drug, so it's a synthetic knockoff of progesterone. And this is this drug that does it can elevate your breast cancer risk because it binds with the wrong receptor in the breast. And hormones, you don't just have a hormone just go, like spill out into you and take action. It has to bind with this thing called a receptor, dioxinase receptor, and then it can be active in your body. And so medroxyprogesterone acetate binds with the glucocorticoid receptor, stress hormone receptor, which can increase breast cancer risk. Does not help your sleep. It is harmful to the brain, harmful to the cardiovascular system. I mean, this is all so terrible. And this is part of the reason why the Women's Health Initiative study found all these results like, breast cancer and things in women. Part of it was that they gave estrogen to women who were in their 70s. This is so horrible. They probably harm those women because if you give estrogen to an unhealthy woman, it will make her worse. But if you give it to a woman right at menopause who's healthy, it will protect her bones and brain and cardiovascular system and ease her symptoms, provided her health is good at that time. And so, this that they did with the Women's Health Initiative study, sorry, I lost my train of thought here a little bit. It was, So those drugs, the reason they had these effects of like cancer and Alzheimer's, this is a medroxyprogesterone acetate. This is called confounding. When you have, they say, estrogen did this, but wait, what's the other variable in the study? What else did you give them? Might that have had a role? And you see from independent testing without estrogen of medroxyprogesterone acetate, how harmful it is. And so this is the drug on Kaiser's formulary. I asked my doctor for oral micronized progesterone. I'm very careful. Prometrium is a brand drug, and I support Kaiser's mission to give people generics because then they can have medical care for the most people, make it less unaffordable for people if we're not giving everyone the brand drug, but a generic that's hopefully a good generic that acts like good generics. That's a whole other problem. And so the doctor prescribes me, he means to prescribe me progesterone, but what's on their formulary gets slotted in. And I'm just panic stricken, because I see, I managed to check. I checked at the pharmacy what I was getting, just, what I know about medicine. And it was this other drug, medroxyprogesterone acetate, the one that is not helpful and would not help my sleep or symptoms, my main symptoms. And so I get somebody to change it. And then I go there and it's really expensive. And I mean, when I say really expensive, my medication is supposed to be covered. And it was like $40. And that was just I didn't even have the full dose. That was a third of the dose. Well, I can't as a person, like I'm a newspaper columnist, an author, I'm middle class, or I was then, back when you could earn a living writing, and I'm on a budget. I eat the hamburger that's the next best thing to dog food in those big rolls because I need to keep costs down. So this was not in the budget and it should have been covered. And so I fight 3 big battles with Kaiser to get the drug progesterone, the oral micronized progesterone that's healthy and safe. We see this from the science. I snowstorm them with science, good science, randomized controlled trials, safety, everything. And then, so I fight for getting the right drug the amount I need and getting it covered. Now, here's the thing in the US, this is yet another, I mean, there's so many betrayals, just rife, medicine is rife with them. So oral micronized progesterone in France, they give you 300 milligrams. And they've been doing that since the 80s. And women are not getting cancer, getting sick. In fact, progesterone is one of the healthiest drugs you could take. It's a hormone in the human body, and it goes up to 10 times the amount in pregnancy that women have in a menstrual cycle. So pregnant women are not dying from this, 10 times jump in the progesterone in their bodies because it's healthy and helpful. And so in the US, they give 100 or 200 milligrams of oral micronized progesterone. No, why? Did they test and say, oh my God, this is so much better for women than 300? No. Clinical habit. We do this because we do this. Well, this is terrible. And the reason it's so terrible is that you want to take the 300 milligrams because progesterone, unless you have, there's something called liver ascites fluid, a fluid issue in your liver, or you have very, very low blood pressure because progesterone lowers your blood pressure, you're going to be able to take this. Oh, peanut oil allergy is another thing. It's in peanut oil, and doctors don't know this. I mean, kill your patient with the generic drug who is, going to need their EpiPen. Like taking progesterone, which is made of yams, by the way. So you need this amount because you don't know how you metabolize steroid hormones. These are hormones, progesterone, estrogen, testosterone. And you need to make sure you have enough in your body to protect you from the endometrial cancer or the breast cancer, and then also to protect your brains and bone and your brain and bones and cardiovascular system. This is really, really vital, and so the doctors who give the 100 milligrams, they refuse to give more because they don't understand the science. And that's what their colleague down the hall does. It's not medicine. It's hearsay, evidence-based medicine. It's hearsay-based medicine. So these doctors are harming their patients. They don't know. They mean to help them. And they're, in fact, afraid to prescribe what would be an adequate dose. And I've seen this in my own care very recently. It's called practicing defensive medicine. And now what this means is that doctors, they're ignorant of the science. So what they do, they're afraid of harming you or losing their medical license. And since they don't know what they're talking about, literally, they will take action in a way that they'll either overtreat you or undertreat you. And this isn't just in menopause and perimenopause. People get unnecessary surgeries that come with the horrible cost, rehab. Every surgery, every medical procedure or drug you take has a potential for harm. And so that's what you're doing by, having these risks, imposed on you that you don't even know about. And there's something called informed consent that should be a part of medical care. And what this means is that when a doctor is proposing treatment for you, that you need to be made to understand this, that you need to understand what the treatment is, why it's being given to you, their diagnostic reasoning, all of these things that many doctors don't even explain, in order to be able to agree to that treatment. So informed consent, if you're not informed, you can't consent. It's like being asked to, okay, we're in the dark, point your fingers to an area on the map, that kind of thing, except it's medicine and it's your body and health. And these small things, you can have some treatment for something where you think this is a minor thing and you can be harmed for life. And this goes on, and just to let people know, in every area of medicine. So an example is, I had, I'm pretty healthy. In going Menopostal, I tell you the most efficient and powerful ways to eat and exercise. I'm a hedonistic pig. Like, picture me with a snout. I really am, and also, okay, I'm not putting on Lululemon. I can't afford to go to a gym at this point writing this book. I'm not putting on Lululemon, going with the LA women. I'm really uncoordinated. I took yoga once. They said, like, you're supposed to do something. Like, if a doctor tells me, raise your right hand, I have to think about it. I'm a smart person physically, like, retarded. Are we allowed to say retarded? I am. No, totally. And I have to tell them, I'm not screwing with you. I'm just like, the bad, whatever. It's so supposedly associated with ADHD. And so just to tell you about the care in medicine. So I had to get 2 corneal endothelium transplants. This is a 1-cell layer of the eye. It's like the plumber. You have fluid in your eye. And when it's working, it releases the fluid, and so you're not getting this fluid buildup. You can see, and the cells in mine, I have something called, it's called Fuchs dystrophy. You better believe, as a woman who wrote books with the F word in 2 titles, I call it something else. Like my mother had it. And so your cells die and then you go blind. You progressively go blind. And so it's miraculous and wonderful. I was able to get this. I'm an organ donor. I cried when she told me I would get donor cells. That's why I'm an organ donor. I donate my whole body to science, except they're going to like throw my eyeballs in the trash can, when they take everything else. But so in this field, my surgeon, she seems quite expert. I'm a judge of medical care and I could see her prudence, but she actually prescribed me this huge overdose of steroids for my eye. Now in the field, they give 4 drops as a standard. Again, clinical habit. Nobody's tested and said, this is the right amount. And I'm metabolically very healthy. So I have low inflammation in my body. I don't have what's called insulin resistance. I eat a carnivore diet. I eat all meat and grease and butter. It's actually quite healthy. And I talk about low carb in the book as the how to be healthy for a lifetime based on what really causes heart disease. Anyway, so she prescribes these drops called prednisolone acetate. And they are systemically active. And instead of prescribing 4, she figures if 4 is good, 8 is better. This is the biggest, idiocy, and I don't want to call her an idiot. She's just ignorant. And, there's a reason for this. She went to Yale. She's really smart. She's careful. She really cares. She's prudent and does these things where I see, like, my transplant wasn't holding. And she said, we're going to wait a week and see if it sits down. She wasn't like, let me do this Clockwork Orange-like procedure on you right now. And so she prescribes 8 drops. This made me so sick. It shut off all my natural ability to heal. This is why my transplant didn't hold, and I'm so sick from this for months. What got disturbed is called the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Your hypothalamus, I'm Jewish, so it's like the bubby, of your brain. You cold? You hungry? You thirsty? So by doing that, it checks out, is everything up and running okay? And then if not, it yells over the pituitary gland, hey, get some, get the right stuff happening here. So your pituitary, for example, will message your adrenal glands, hey, elevate the stress hormone cortisol, which people just demonize, but it's needed for many, many healthy processes. If you didn't have cortisol, you would die. And if it didn't rise properly. And so mine got all screwed up and I had tachycardia and bradycardia every day. This is an extremely high heartbeat and extremely low. 177 beats per minute while sitting on my couch petting my little dog. And this is really dangerous. I'm lucky that I'm metabolically healthy because it didn't cause my heart damage. But she had no idea. And so I went back and I had her change my prescription to what's called a softer steroid, Lotamax ointment that doesn't have the effects. The prednisolone, what I know that she didn't know, she said, oh, it's not, doesn't have systemic effects. Of course it does. You have these glands called punctal glands in your eye. They go down into your sinuses. You put anything in your eye, an eye drop, goes right down to the rest of your body. And steroids harm your bones. They increase diabetes risk. They increase the intraocular pressure in your eye that leads to glaucoma. So they're prescribing these drops without having any idea. They're not looking at, well, how is my patient's lifetime health going to be harmed by this? Is there an alternative? They don't even know to look. And so I ended up, being able to solve this. It took months. I was very sick for months. And then the second transplant around, I dealt with this. And then one other thing, all these eye doctors doing this incredibly, elite surgery, cornea replacement, everything. I mean, she replaced a 1 cell layer of, in my eye. That's a plumber. I mean, there's stitches in my eye. It's incredible. So they all prescribed the steroids and the antibiotic drops that have BAK preservatives. So if you have eye drops, look on them. If they have BAK preservatives, or the other thing is, oh God, I'm not going to remember. They're preservatives in over-the-counter eye drops that also are not good. You should try to get preservative-free, drops, if you have dry eye or something. Those BAK preservatives in the steroid, in the eye drops they prescribe, they erode your corneal epithelium. That's the out-facing part, the endothelium, the inner. This is the part that's, out to air. And they begin eroding it within a matter of days. They raise intraocular pressure, can, increase glaucoma risk. This is so horrible because you don't need to give drops with that. So I had her change me. There's ofloxacin with that stuff in it. And then I said, can you change me to moxifloxacin, generic, same price, broader spectrum protection, and no preservatives. And she, she's a little miffed because doctors don't like it when you're like Miss Know-It-All girl. It's like, excuse me, but you're harming my eyes. I don't put it that way. You need to be more tactful. And I do that in the book, tell you how to not, incite your doctor to get them to partner with you, to give you the evidence-based care that you bring to them, and so, I mean, how terrible. None of them know this is on Kaiser's formulary, the drug that harms your epithelium. I mean, seriously, this is every area. And so I want to tell that story to show people, how inadvertently doctors are harming you out of ignorance. And Kaiser, if Kaiser were responsible, what they would do is provide experts on the immune system, on steroids. They would have people fill in for what these doctors, the elite surgeons, don't know. Because believe me, someone's sticking X-Acto in my eye. I want them like front and center, focused on that, learning that, practicing that, improving their skill like 24/7. And so it's not reasonable to expect them to know immunology and all these other things, but that's what's happening. And this is part of the reason doctors are harming patients, because medical institutions are irresponsible, not spending the money, not backstopping their doctors' lack of knowledge. I go on a little bit, but it's because you ask these questions and it's like opening, it would be Pandora's box, but the good kind, where it's just, you launch me into the stuff that's really important to tell people. And, part of the reason I sort of ramble is that there is so much information that is so vital for women to have. I actually tell people, look, if you have a friend who doesn't read, tell them what my book says. I even tell people, I say, like, if you can't afford my book, you can steal it. But then I say, I really need the money, so it's better if you take it to the library, because and that's also why we published it. And my agent was involved with this. We talked about it. She's a saint, very involved from the beginning about getting this message to women, that it was published not in hardcover, which is like cooler for an author and you make more money, and then you get 2 sales seasons because it's hardcover, and then they launch a paperback. We published this in trade paperback, so it would be as cheap as possible. And then the Kindle's like also the Nook on Barnes Noble, $9.99. And there's a really good audiobook for people who don't read, voiced by this, she's a great singer, Carrington McDuffie. Brilliant voiceover, does all my books, and I'm someone who cast Eartha Kitt for a Hardee's Fish Sticks commercial voiceover. I mean, she's amazing. Hopefully people know she's beautiful, like deep voice. She was Catwoman. And because I listen to classic music. And so Carrington's of the same vein, these women with these deep, resonant voices, really smart. Eartha Kitt was a brilliant woman who was an activist and everything, stood up to Lyndon Johnson's wife about the Vietnam War. So I encourage people to look into her. She's pretty amazing. And how she lived her life too here. And she was in Beverly Hills, and the city of Beverly Hills took her chickens and goats. She was early adopter of like this artisanal farming of eggs, your own eggs. They took her chickens and goats and everything. So she reads the law and she's like, yeah, guess what? And the Beverly Hills city manager to take her down to the farmer's market in LA, where they're actual farmers and goats and chickens and things, and buy her new goats and chickens and deliver them to her home. She's amazing. So anyway, brief riff on that.
What would you say are the top 3 takeaways that you want women to take from your book, Going Menopostal? If you just had to, if someone was just like, okay, I might not have time to read or listen to the entire thing, give me 3 things that I probably don't know that I should.
That perimenopause is a time when you may have periods where you don't ovulate, and you need to be protected with progesterone. And so this is a thing that I can't just tell you how to do, but it's in my book. It's called quantitative basal temperature taking. And, you can go to a doctor and say, hey, here's the science. I want to get this treatment. And they can say no. And so as I said, I'm about advice that's doable, that'll actually work. And so what I do is I give women this measurement, and this is from this doctor, incredible endocrinologist, Geraldine Pryor, MD. She treats patients. She's retired now. Researcher, fierce. She's the reason progesterone and perimenopause are known, to the extent they are. And she and her colleagues created this from this guy's research in the 70s that shows that when you have progesterone in your body, your temperature rises a certain amount. And so you just take your temperature, a drugstore thermometer, you log it for a month, first morning temperature before you get out of bed. You don't drink anything. And then if you don't have the temperature rise for an adequate number of days, or it doesn't rise at all, meaning you have no progesterone rather than just too few days, you need a prescription, and that will help you sleep. And it helps to have the symptom. And I'm not telling people to lie, but the sleep. Your doctor doesn't get to deny you sleep. I'm not sleeping. In my case, I went to bed as if you hit me with a large frying pan, and then I wake up at 6 a.m. Like, unless a nuclear warhead were not only launched into my house, but my dog woke up. My dog was like a fake dog, doesn't really do dog-like things, and barked like holy hell. I'm not going to wake up. Perimenopause, oh my God, 5 or 6 times a night. I'm like doing like voodoo. Okay, if I just like move my body this way and think these thoughts and like do this, will I get back to sleep? And you have brain fog, you're not effective at work, you're sick, you're angry all day, besides the mental health effects of that, it's this horrible, you become not the person you were in this horrible way. And so this is really, really, really important. And doctors don't know. And also they prescribe estrogen to perimenopausal women, which can overdose you on the drug that's on the hormone that's a problem. Estrogen spikes and dies in perimenopause. And it's not that you have estrogen causing hot flashes. It's like a withdrawal symptom. So it's like drug addicts. They have hot flashes. And what happens is when it does this spike and dive, you have an elevation of stress hormones. And that's why hot flashes are not just uncomfortable, they're harmful. And so in menopause, it's different. And so the next thing is that in menopause, if you are a healthy, just menopausal woman, I have tests in the book. It's very important. Doctors may not know what to test you on. You need to make sure you don't have plaque in your ovaries. I mean, not your ovaries, arteries. That'd be really interesting. Yeah. And so you need to be metabolically healthy. And if you are, you can initiate estrogen very close to menopause, ideally right away after 12 months without a period, or, within 6 years, or possibly 10, but, longer than that. So if you're healthy, this isn't like this firm cutoff. It's about health. But if you take it after that, there's a chance that you will either have it be ineffective or harmful. And if you take it right at menopause, it will protect your bones, your brain, your cardiovascular system. And just to tell you why that's so important, you take it then, you have an endothelium in your arteries. This is the part where plaque can, the plaque build up, and that what happens is the unstable plaque breaks off. The natural healthy healing of a clot forms, and this can block blood flow, and then you have either blocked blood flow to the heart attack, or a stroke if it's the brain. This is really horrible. So you need to keep your arteries healthy and open. Estrogen helps do that. And if you don't start at menopause, what happens is the receptors, those little docking sites that allow estrogen to be active and help you, they start disappearing. And so if you take estrogen at 60, do you have, I don't know the amount of receptors that we left or per person or how it varies. This isn't a thing I think that's even been studied. Maybe it has, but basically you want to initiate it very soon. And then it is protective and helpful. And the hot flashes in menopause, obviously you're not having estrogen spiking and diving because it's low. What happens is it seems that you have, your brain is used to the experience of it spiking and diving. And so it's still reacting on that. And so, but women tend to have lesser hot flashes in menopause, some women. And many women don't have any symptoms. And this is what's important also. So if you're not symptomatic, you're not going to take medicine for your symptoms, but knowing how protective estrogen is, like that your bones, that you need to be taking it at 79, when your bones are prone to fracture, you're not going to fracture at 60, and so, most women don't. If you do as the Kaiser head of gynecology advised me like 2 months ago, based on 2002 advice discredited in 2004, she tells me you should taper off estrogen at 60. She also told me it caused cancer and all these things that it's shown. No, it doesn't. If you have cancer in you, estrogen and progesterone can run with it, but they're not carcinogenic. And so she tells me this harmful advice. So if you stop estrogen at 60, your bones reverse a little bit in terms of the health and their strength and everything. Bone density is just sort of a bullshit measure. It measures, it tells you a little bit about risk, but it's actually not what's meaningful is bone strength and quality. And that is it's the reason we have bone mineral density is this measure. It's what pharmaceutical companies use to prescribe you a drug. And this is from Merck doing this horrible scam on healthy women. And so you need to be taking this throughout your lifespan. If you can, you need to be monitored. So you have it in you. You're taking estrogen at 79 when you're likely to fracture, because then your bones, with working out, you need to do weight bearing, very, weights heavy for you. Oh, this, I guess, yes for three. So this is the last thing I'll say. Doctors tell you to walk or to do yoga for your bones. Now, there are myriad benefits to yoga and walking, but you don't, unless you're walking with a baby elephant, you're not putting enough load on your bones for you to tell your bones, hey, look, we're doing some, stressful stuff here. You got to either build up or maintain, because women in menopause often can't build bone, and you will not, if you exercise with heavy weights, you will not get big muscles. Look, see me, I have like little girly muscles. So I do slow speed. This is the kind that's the most efficient, slow speed weight training to muscle failure. What this is, you always do it bilaterally, both sides, so you don't get injured. You don't pump iron, really slowly, 5 seconds up, 5 seconds down, until you cannot do one with good form. You're squirming, you're gonna get injured. And at that point, you have what's called muscle failure. And then, what you've done is create enough tension that you're going to signal your cells, hey, you gotta, either maintain or build. And this is how you build bone. And the doctors suggest this, with these, unless you're doing, you're like incredible, like yoga, Olympic, you might, if you do yoga really, really intensively for years and years, like a friend of mine who teaches it, she has good, bone health. But also the bone mineral density tests they give you, these do not tell you whether you're going to fracture. You can have a really high or really low bone mineral density. This is just how much bone stuff you have in a little place in your bones. And the drugs they give you, the bisphosphonate drugs, Fosamax, these other drugs are generics. They make your bones more brittle and unhealthy and micro-cracked in 3 years. And the reason why is that they're not making your bones healthier. They're keeping you from getting rid of old crappy bone. And so you're just keeping really crappy old bone. And this isn't health. You need to have strong, resilient bones, and you have that from this kind of exercise. And then also eating a low carb diet without sugar, flour. And, I tell people how to do that too. And those two things, again, I'm a pig. I, like greasy food all day. But if you're not eating carbs, you're not provoking the insulin secretion that puts on fat. Insulin's not having to get up, slam down your blood sugar over and over, to the point where most of us have a broken insulin response as we get older. When you're young and robust, you can eat cookies and Doritos and stuff, and your body in many cases will amortize it, but as you get older, you're less able to do that. And if you can start as a young woman, like if you're 22 and listening to this, oh my God, what an opportunity. Eat a low carb diet, and there are ways to be disciplined and do that. And then also do this exercise. This is the fork in the road. Like if you don't do that, unhealth and suffering and cardiovascular, heart attacks, 1 in 5 women will die of heart attacks now. Soon it'll be 1 in 3, or cardiovascular disease. This is horrible. And you'll prevent that. You can live, like, just be you. Look at me. I'm 61 years old. Wrinkles and places there weren't and everything, but I'm just basically me, and in the better health than I've been in, once I started doing this exercise. Even as a young woman who ran, I used to run 7 miles 3 times a week. This is healthier. And I do 16 minutes a week of this workout. And I also admittedly do, because I'm sitting in a chair, I jog on my porch. Actually, no, this is not true. So everything I do is like, how do I do this so I can encourage myself to be disciplined about this? Go run on your porch in the morning, Amy. So I'm from Motown, and I love that music. And so I have on Pandora a station that plays Motown, and then also Aretha Franklin, who's not Motown, who's like my huge inspiration. And I dance on my porch, and I'm not coordinated. I'm not a good dancer, but I do that. And then I'm in Venice, and people walk by, and I combine this with yelling out to people like, "Hey, have a beautiful day! Love your dress!" And so this is this wonderful thing that I have, where I'm like saying nice things to people. They're happy. I'm happy because I made somebody feel happy. I'm dancing. This is the kind of thing you have to do so you can support yourself in doing what's healthy. These minor things, like just be disciplined about those 2 things, and it'll change your life in terms of health and suffering. And if you have kids, yeah, you need to do, this is how I berate my friends into like eating right. I say, like, your kids, they love you and you're such a great dad. And, your girlfriend, she loves you. And like, imagine how devastating it would be if you just, drop dead of a heart attack, and you will, and you better listen to me and do this diet right now. So I'm a coercive, manipulative bitch, but for the good.
And on that note, Amy, where can people check out your book?
So my book is Going Menopostal, what you and your doctor need to know about the real science of menopause and perimenopause. You can subscribe. I'm going to have a free Substack in like days. Subscribers at amyalkon.net. It's AMYALKON. You can find my book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, independent booksellers. Please post a review of it. I need those. And please tell people what's in my book if they're not big readers and everything. And thank you, Zuby. This is so wonderful. You ask the greatest questions. Could medical bloggers and like podcasters please learn from you?
Awesome. Amy, thank you for the gift of your time. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, and good luck with the book. I hope a lot of people read it.
Thank you.